Hey, it's Tony Brueski, and this is our week in review over the weekend, taking a look back at some of the most compelling conversations and stories that we've covered for you of the last week. Brand new episodes back Monday morning, bright and early, 5 a.m. here on the podcast.
This is the examination of the hidden human condition.
You're listening to the Hidden Killers Podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski.
We are talking with Jim Rathman, former Secret Service investigative consultant, about the case against Bryan Kohberger. Lots of interesting pieces of evidence popping up, or maybe not even evidence per se, but little pieces of information about his life. What I'm curious about is the significance that this resume that's come out actually could have on the trial itself. We're seeing a lot of interesting things circumstantially that are not connected to the case, but it does talk about his very good knife skills with fish cutting, his upper body strength with all of the boxing. Are these things that are just standing much more out to us now because we know the charges that are against him? Or are these little breadcrumbs and nuggets of his life that maybe played out in a not so productive or positive way later?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think it's a lot of breadcrumbs and nuggets, but it eventually adds up because you're wanting to paint the picture of a guy that's able to pull off a killing of all these students. So, you know, you're physically fit. So him being boxing, running, various things shows that he's got a level of fitness. The filleting of fish and the cutting knife skills explains why he had such a knife, and how they were able to find blood on the sheath. It explains and I don't know if they forensically can link up the patterns of cutting or stabbing, or maybe even it'll be really interesting to see what they find forensically on that. But all that together, even though a lot of it's circumstantial, minus the sheath that has their DNA, definitely paint a picture of who did this.
Yeah, in a very kind of creepy sort of way. They've been asking now the court to not allow cameras into the courtroom once the trial actually does take place. What's your opinion on that from your experience, having a camera there versus not? Does it affect the trial and a conviction or non-conviction in either way?
Well, I just think the defense is trying to stop anything further at this point that could portray their client to be even more in a poor light than he already is. Maybe the cameras will catch a reaction out of him where he just shows no emotion, no remorse, nothing, which could, play right into the prosecutors as to him being a sociopath and things such as that. So I'm not surprised that they attempted it. Really, it's up to the judge. If the judge wants this to be a public display like what we've seen in other cases like Alex Murdaugh. But we'll see what happens here. But I think the outcome's still going to be the same regardless if there's cameras or not.
Given that Kohberger was in the process of trying to turn his life around, as we understand, and as suggested by his studies in criminology and efforts to understand himself, how common is it for individuals with similar backgrounds like that to engage in violent acts like this that he's alleged to have been involved in? And how does law enforcement typically approach suspects with these sort of backgrounds?
Well, you go into it, that he's well educated. We saw that on his traffic stop and the things he was questioning and doing. That he's, put himself through a lot of school to try to learn everything he can. So you just have to be very careful about how you approach him. I don't really know if they would have known of his, being bullied on as a kid at the time. Anyway, I think that was something that was learned a little bit later on. But you do know you're dealing with a well-educated individual, so you want to make sure you do everything right, and that way there's nothing that could jeopardize the case as you question him.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Brueski.
Jim Rathman, former Secret Service investigative consultant. Thank you so much for your insight into this case. Jim's website, jimrathmancompany.com. If you like the podcast, you want access to ad-free episodes, become a premium subscriber through Apple Podcasts. Check it out right now. You can get 3 days free and access to all of the true crime podcasts within the True Crime Today family that we have right here for you when you sign up. Check it out exclusively on Apple Podcasts. My name's Tony Brueski. Stay with us.